Hello and welcome to another extraordinary episode of GTFO, Grow Traffic Figures It Out. Today we're joined by Jacob Anthony, who is the founder of Loaf and Ladder, and he's going to tell us a bit about his business, a bit about what he does, and also how he promotes himself and the things that he's learned during the time. My name is Dalley. I'm one of the directors here at Grow Traffic, and I'm going to be hopefully guiding you through. To those people that listened to the last episode or the last extraordinary episode of GTFO, just want to apologize for the sound quality. Hopefully I've got my headset on today. Hopefully it should be better. Jacob, would you like to kind of introduce yourself and tell you who you are, what your background is, and a bit more about your business?
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so I'm Jacob. As you can tell, I'm Welsh, and yeah, basically I've been a chef well since I was 9. I'm 42 now, so what does that make me? That's like almost 31 years, something like that. But yeah, I say I've been a chef for 31 years, obviously not officially, but I've been in the kitchen for 31 years basically, and I love food. I love what it does for people, and so that's why I started Loaf and Ladder basically, which is it was originally a bakery. It was an artisan bakery that started from home. I literally started it with about £20 in my pocket, and because that's all I had, then basically I'd had to walk away from a relationship basically, and I had to find a way to earn money. So I thought, okay, what do I know how to do that basically people need on a weekly basis? So it's just like, okay, I've got an oven, I've got some money for a bread pan basically, and I started making bread, selling, and then the way it started was basically I put a loaf of bread picture up on Facebook saying, does anyone in the local area want some? And orders started coming in from there. It was weekend deliveries, so I would do them bespoke because I could at the time, because it was I felt like I could, and that was my USP then, basically, that you could have whatever you wanted in the loaf. But yeah, I soon started to get busy, and I soon started to realize that doing them bespoke probably wasn't the best idea in terms of capacity and things like that then as well. So I was doing them to order, that kind of thing, and I got very, very busy, and I started to burn out basically. So what happened, this was just before Christmas 2018, I started to burn out, and I've hit full burnout then just after Christmas and into the new year 2019, then panic attacks and everything. So that I was just like, oh my god, this is just crazy. So I kind of left that business to go and work for someone else, because I just needed to take pressure away from myself for a second. Then when I kind of like, there was a hankering back to the business, it was just like, I can't just leave it there. So I thought, okay, let's do an autopsy of what went wrong. And I realized, and I hadn't realized at the time that it was the burnout. So I started to go, okay, yeah, maybe I should have been teaching people how to do this rather than actually doing the actual baking myself, because I didn't have enough capacity. And then I realized nobody actually deals with burnout. Nobody actually sort of talks about the relationship between food and mood, and as well, there aren't many chefs that do that. There aren't many chefs that teach people how to prep ahead, so that during their busy lives they don't have to go through as much stress in cooking. So I started doing that basically. I started culinary coaching. I still do a little bit of baking on the side then, under a different business name then, which is Jacob's Fine Foods, and that is exclusively brownies now. So I'm not doing the bread, but I'm still baking then as such. So yeah, so there's a couple of parts to my business then. Basically, there's the teaching and there's the coaching as such. I'll soon be bringing out a cookery course then, or a cookery membership, like a Netflix style one, then basically where people can pick which lessons they want to learn. And then but I really love doing my one-to-one stuff, like teaching people, taking people and helping their relationships then as well, and helping them avoid burnout, that kind of thing, because you know what, and the funny thing is, I thought I was going to be helping women, but it seems to be that the women want to buy my services for the men, that kind of thing, and they want to help them take, sort of help them in the relationship, you know what I mean? Like, and one of the ways I help in relationships is I help men to realize that the women are have this mental load, or what's called mental load, in certain circles, basically, where they are juggling mentally all those all the things that that happen in the house. They're juggling school runs, they're juggling washing, they're juggling things that are going to happen in the future, like Christmas. Like they're juggling all, and they're thinking, oh, I got to do this now, and yeah, and we as men don't always realize they're juggling that. Then, so to ask them then what can I help with, that kind of thing, it actually kind of adds another task, because they've got to think of stuff that they want us to do, rather than us just going, right, okay, looking at what needs doing, having to think about what actually happens in the house first of all, and then going, oh, that doesn't happen by miracle. Maybe I should do that. Maybe I should take that off off the plate. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think it's a really difficult one in some ways, because I think most men, if you were to speak to them about what they want for their relationship and what they want for their role, they'd probably talk about equality. They'd probably talk about, wanting to share the household responsibility. But just by the fact that somebody maybe is around a little bit more, or they're closer to home, or just generally that their responsibility has always been the children. If you think that if children are there, for example, that a woman will tend to have had an extended maternity leave, when compared to a man's paternity leave, and you'll find that very quickly, I think people fall into those gender stereotype roles, if they hadn't already, and by and large, I think a lot of people have already well and truly got into those before they've even had children, and it's really difficult. Women have careers and jobs in the way that they didn't 50 years ago or 150 years ago, and I think quite often the expectation that we place on women, I say we as society, and I think that women place this on themselves as well, as it's not just it's a kind of it's a symptom of the patriarchy, if you like. That
I was just going to say that, that it's been passed down from generation to generation, and us men, as modern men, sort of are feeling the effects of the patriarchy ourselves, because we're being given this stuff, this tradition that doesn't actually work in a modern world. You know what I mean? We're being And there's also things like the patriarchy, like the sort of the leave. And it just clicked in my head. Well, hang on a second. If we can't take as much time off um, as the women for paternity, then how are we supposed to actually to allow women to go and work, and less take over, you know what I mean, without being financially detrimental. So yeah, that's an interesting one. That needs to be equalized, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, women taking maternity leave, I think, is attributed, and maybe not even women taking maternity leave, but women taking maternity leave and the fear of women taking maternity leave is attributed to the part of the gender pay gap. It's a huge problem. But I know a lot of what you think about is home based. It's about ensuring that when you walk past the loaded bin, you know, the full overflowing bin, that a man who perhaps isn't around as much, and so it isn't his responsibility in the same way that it would be if he was around all the time, that they actually see these things and act on them, and recognize their complicity in the kind of overwork that they're placing on their partner, if that's the right way to think about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and just go, well, you know what, I can take that, I can pack that up and take that out. It's going to take me 2 seconds, that kind of thing. Being more aware. We always one of the biggest things or the most common complaints I've seen is, right, they walk past the things on the stairs. I've heard people say, and that's just like, well, okay, well, that's got to go somewhere. So why not take it up? If you're going up, take it with you. That kind of thing. And it's and the whole "what can I help you with" kind of thing. Okay, just take 5 minutes, look around, look at things that aren't in place, and go, right, I'm going to do that. That kind of thing. So
I think that it's problematic when you have to ask somebody, what can I help you with? And it's just that use of language that kind of, it suggests that it's still not your responsibility. I'm helping you. What can I help you with? Suggests that actually I'm going to do this because I'm doing you a favor. It's not my responsibility. And I think this is a big thing that perhaps we as men need to recognize and start to get over, that, you know, because it is our responsibility. It is our home. It is our life. You know, we should be thinking about, you know, our responsibility isn't work in the garden, for example, or whatever, or the DIY. It is, you know, making sure that the house runs on a day-to-day basis, making sure that the family is fed, watered, clothes cleaned when they need to be. It's as much our responsibility as anyone else's.
Exactly. And you know, it's and we create then a better responsibility, a better example to our kids then when we do that, you know what I mean. And and the other thing then as well is, if your hands are free, right, and you can go and do something, and go and do something to help, then it means you get to spend better quality time with your partner then. You know what I mean? Because their job list is just cut in half. Well, you know, could potentially cut in half. So, you know, and they're not going to be so tired. They're going to have time to enjoy each other more. And sometimes even you can do it together. You know, if you can do it together, or be doing things around each other together, you can have a nice chat, and it's just really simple stuff like that, basically.
It is simple stuff, but it's stuff that's going to take quite a while to change, I think. We're talking about generational issues. I mean, I look back at my dad, for example, and my mum and dad have a, you know, relatively, or not relatively, a very traditional kind of family relationship. I think I can count on my hand the number of times that my dad has cooked a meal for either himself or for the family. Since I've been alive, in the 40 years that I've been alive, a handful of times maximum, and mainly because my mum was, I don't know, in hospital or away, or the few times that she was, and I think that it has a knock-on impact, doesn't it, over time. And there's the way that our parents think impacts us, and whilst logically, kind of rationally, we know a lot of these things instinctively, we are probably still drawn back to some of those behaviors that we've learned a generation earlier. And I often look at my son and think, I often look at myself in the way that I handle my son, and look at it through the frame of how my dad would have done it, and what my dad would have said. And I can see some of the reactions that I have are very similar to him. And then but the way I deal with it is generally a little bit different. I'm not perfect, and I'm not where I would like to be with it. And probably I'm hopeful that he will learn some things, from me, and hopefully get better and improve, and I'm hopeful that that's the way he'll go. He might have similar reactions to me, but he maybe not react in some of the ways that perhaps I do, and hopefully we improve it as we go along. But it's taken me a long time to improve the way I think and operate in a domestic setting, if that's the right phrase.
So what is it that
just because I didn't really understand.
So what is it that made you decide then that you wanted to be this person then, that made you well, it was obviously a decision, but there must have been something that sparked that.
So I think that it's a combination of things. So the first thing to say is that I have always considered myself, since I was like probably 16, 17, always considered myself to be a feminist. And with women over the years, we're always relatively equal, and an equal partnership. And between me and my wife, over the years, it just became that bit less equal, as we fell into those gender roles. And inevitably over time, it just crept in more and more, and not helped because my wife is exceptionally, gifted, an exceptionally gifted cook. So she's great at cooking. She loves doing it. And she comes up with some amazing dishes, and I'm really not. And I'm not that creative when it comes to cooking. And actually my relationship with food's a bit different, because I've always had that relationship with food, that it's a food source, it's a power, it's you eat to maintain yourself, and not necessarily eating for pleasure. Whereas Rachel really has a kind of eating for pleasure mindset, and has been brought up with that. And I've grown into that as I've got older. But it wasn't something that I was brought up with. It was never part of my cultural capital, if you like. So I think that changed with Rachel's kind of understanding of that, and with that being important to her, it naturally swung the dynamics of our relationship in a certain direction. And then over time, I started to get more kind of senior jobs. I started to be out of the house more. I started to be working in Manchester, so I was working longer hours. And Rachel was in the house in close proximity to the primary school where our son went. And so she took on more and more of those responsibilities. And it got to the point where I was probably just living in the house for a few hours, and it, I didn't really have that kind of understanding about the domestic kind of situation that we had in the house in many ways, and decisions about the household and about Leon and things like that.
Yeah.
Were just made without me because I wasn't there, I wasn't around. So having started to work for myself at Grow Traffic, I think that was the first time in about 4 or 5 years that I'd taken Leon to and from school, for example.
Yeah.
And I did that every day. Once I finished working in Manchester, every day I walked Leon up to school and picked him up again, and it was great. What a great way to redevelop my relationship with him, which had become quite strained at that point. And although we went out at the we went walking at the weekends, he and I, and things like that, my mind was still on other things. I was still partly in Manchester a lot of the time in my head. And so I recognized that circumstances accidentally took us in a certain direction without anybody realizing where we were going or what was happening. And before you know it, those habits are set and entrenched, and the responsibilities and the roles and all the dynamics that go with it, they really are entrenched as a part of your existence, and they're hard to get out of. And it's hard to kind of not even, it's one thing to say, look, I want us to be equal. It's another thing to even be able to recognize how the inequality works, or how the dynamics have shifted in a certain way. It's often difficult to realize that until after the fact.
Because you kind of need to understand where the inequality lies first of all, and really dig down in it and go, right, okay, and also to figure out how the other person feels then as well, where they feel the inequality is, then that kind of thing. Because we can talk about the facts all day long, I do this, you do that, but that's not what the relationship is. It's where they feel those inequalities are, and what exactly.
Absolutely, you're dead right, actually, and that is a really key point, that it is how somebody feels that it's we all view the world through different filters, different frames, the way we perceive the world, and it is the perception of the person in front of you that really matters. And unfortunately, often, if you're not the one that's doing the do all the time, you're never going to have a perception that anything's particularly wrong, because you're not the one that is struggling in that situation. It's always going to be the person that feels put on, or hard done to, or however you want to phrase that. But I do think as well, though, that some of the issues are in the same way that I was saying earlier, that you're thinking about my relationship with my dad and my son, and that it will take generations to overcome some of these things. Some of the expectations that are placed on women, and that women place on themselves domestically, are from the like vestiges of a bygone era where women worked in the home. That was their work, and that everything had to be pristine when the man got back from the mill, or whatever it would be. And I think times have changed, and our expectations of what our domestic life should be, our home life, the way that the home is, and the expectations that probably women place on themselves as well, needs to change. But like I was saying about the way that men are, it's going to take generations. It's not something that will be fixed overnight.
It is, yeah. It's something that's going to take ages. So that's why we need to start now, basically. It's it's a total lifestyle change. Well, it is a lifestyle change, a mindset change, that kind of thing. Also, then as well, you've got then some people, you'll have then some people. So, for example, if you've had a relationship, you're in a relationship with someone who's had a relationship with someone who is very, very traditional, then what's going to happen potentially is that they're going to believe that their job or their worth is entrenched in or encapsulated then in what they do for you, what they, providing the meals, providing this, doing the washing, doing and that's just not the case, basically. I mean, to me, the reason why I burnt out basically was because of my self-worth. Basically, it was my lack of self-worth pushing me to then be of service to people, thinking that they'll that being of service then will make them like me, and you'll just bend over backwards all the time, and I realized I had a bit of coaching, because every good coach has a good coach, and I started to realize, hang on a second, I need to put boundaries in to stop me burning out. I need to put boundaries in. This is this is what I'm expecting, this is what I expect, that kind of thing, and this is what I'll do. And one sentence I came up with is that people do what you accept, not what you expect. Basically, people will treat you in a way that you accept, not the way you expect.
That's a great little saying, isn't it?
Yeah.
People will expect what you accept. People will accept what you expect. I really like that.
Yeah, because they will, if you don't put the boundaries in, right, they'll just do whatever, basically, and they won't. You have to teach people how to treat you, basically, and if you don't want, this is a message to all the partners out there that feel like they're being walked over, that kind of thing, or things aren't equal, right? This is a call to arms now, basically, that you have to start putting in the expectation now, basically, to go and say, this is a problem. I feel that I'm being put on, and we need to talk about this because I love you, and I don't want this to affect our relationship, basically. And this, this is how this is how I feel the relationship is going. Okay, this is how I feel like the home life is going. What can you do to help? Because
definitely, and I think Rachel and I started working on some of these issues ourselves, probably especially because I've been working from home, or I've been much more local for a number of years now. Our relationship is much more equal than it was a handful of years ago, put it that way. It's much more equal, but there's things that I'm there's things that I've kind of done for the first time, certainly probably since lockdown, but certainly over the last year. I mean, something that I thought was quite big for me was that I sorted out all of Leon's school uniforms when he went to high school this time.
Yeah.
And that is something that I have never done, never thought about. It's never been part of my role within the household to have to think about doing that type of thing, because that's always been something that perhaps my that Rachel, my wife, has done. My mum's often kind of come along. She always did it for us, and I know that Rachel's mum did and would have kind of been involved in that too. So it's been something that for me that was a really important thing to do. It was something that he and I did on our own. We made a bit of a day of it and got everything sorted out, and it felt like a pretty big thing. It's a small thing, but it felt like a big thing. It felt like a big shift.
Did you know what you needed to do? Did you have to learn from Rachel at that time then what you needed to do, or?
No, I mean, not really. I just kind of went out and bought some stuff. I think she did tell me she did remind me of some things before I did. But I think it was one of those things where it's just buying clothes, isn't it? And it shouldn't be a big thing, but it's something that becomes almost ritualized in some way, because it's buying clothes for somebody to start a new school, and it becomes somebody's responsibility and all the rest of it, when it's really not that big of an issue, or it shouldn't be. I think the other thing as well is little things like the other day, Rachel asked me would I mind doing the cooking dinner, and absolutely no problem, of course. But she often, our routine means that, she finishes work, she'll go and do the horses. Quite often I'll bob out and try and help her with like the mucking out. But then we'll come back in, I'll go back into my office, go back onto the laptop. By the time I've come back down after listening to, the PM on Radio 4 or whatever I listen to at kind of 5 o'clock, Rachel has fed the cats. She's well on the way with cooking dinner, and that's kind of our evening ritual and routine. And I think that I need to be saying more, can I cook dinner today? And I'm better at doing this on the weekends. I quite often do this on the weekends.
That's good.
However, during the week it's something, and then the other day Rachel asked me to cook, and that felt like a progressive step forward for us, that she didn't just see it as her responsibility. She said, will you do it? And of course,
and there's that
so well,
you can do it as well, isn't it? And the other thing then as well that I think we need to address is it's okay not to know how to do things that seems so easy to your partner, because they've done them so long. And sometimes we put our head in the sand and go, oh, I'm not going to ask because I don't know how to do this, and I'm going to feel stupid not knowing. So my question, if I ask sort of, or if I want to ask something like that, is how would you like this done? Because there's a very different way. People have different ways, that kind of thing as well. So
that's a great shout. How would you like it done, rather than how do I do this? And that's an interesting, that's a really great shout. And it's something that Rachel said to me the other day, actually, when we were kind of having a discussion about how much each of us does and various things that often comes up in our kind of dialogue. And she said to me that sometimes she feels like she can't, she doesn't want to let us do things, Leon and I, because all we'll do, she'll ask us to do something because she wants to sit down and do some work or whatever it is. And then all that will happen is that we will just come in and bombard her with questions about how to do things. And that's, therefore it's the same thing, isn't it? It's still, whilst we're taking the task on, it's still her responsibility, because we're still coming back and asking her how to do things or where things are and things like that. So how how would you like that done is a much better way of phrasing it. I always say to people, when you're talking to people and you're asking questions, one of the worst questions you can ask is why, because it immediately gets somebody's back up and makes them defensive. But if you start to just make it a bit softer by saying something like, what's the reason that you're asking that? It suddenly becomes an easier question to answer. They're not as defensive. Similar thing.
It's no, it's I have to watch myself with that, actually. Like, why are you doing that way? Like, that is something I have to be, especially when I'm tired. You know what I mean? You've got to be more mindful of what way you're speaking when you're tired, basically. But yeah, so yeah, it's because that's one of the things that we're not good at doing as men, is being vulnerable and saying, I don't know how to do DIY, really. I really don't. So yeah, it's kind of I was, in a past relationship, I was kind of ridiculed for that. And I'm like, dude, we're not computer, we're not Macs, we're not mobile phones, we don't come pre-installed with this knowledge of because I always think in computer language, that kind of thing. And it's not something you can just turn this on and we'll go, yeah, I'll do that. No, we don't. We have to have this information from somewhere, and I just didn't, basically. So yeah, that's something we as men need to be aware of as well. That if we're not taught things, how can we possibly know how to? It's not innate. You know what I mean?
You're right.
But yeah, so we've talked loads actually about the mental health and stuff like that, and I'm conscious that Grow Traffic is this podcast is then about
the podcast is about marketing, overall, and promoting businesses. However, it's also really important to understand the passions and the issues that businesses address, and in some ways, with these extraordinary podcasts, these extraordinary GTFOs, that's okay. We don't need to just talk about marketing. But now we've got onto the topic. Tell me a little bit about how you promote yourself, and what you've experienced, and any problems that you've found, and see if we can figure anything out.
I would say basically what I've had is that with the coaching, that kind of thing, because people haven't done it, there hasn't been a combination of teaching people to cook and mindset coaching. Why I don't know, because it's just food and mood is just such an important thing. It's difficult then to know. There's no blueprint, and people don't. They think that I'm assuming that they think that culinary coaching is just, he's going to teach me how to cook stuff, or because I'm a chef, they just go, he's just going to teach me to cook stuff, how to cook, blah, blah, blah. And there's so much more than that there, and because when you've got a business built around life experiences and that is about that's quite unique as such, people don't know which pigeonhole to put that in, basically, and it's then creating a marketing plan, marketing plan around that, around the things that you're teaching, the skills that you're teaching, which are using the keywords, that kind of thing. So what I decided to do was I created a Facebook group then that is specifically for entrepreneurs, and I kind of mirrored myself. Then basically, it was just like, okay, I'm going to create and I see that a ideal client avatar that is, it's kind of loosely based around myself, but also that around the people I see, because I see so many women in business then that have this mum guilt. They have this, they're trying to run the business from home, and they've got the children then basically which are interrupting that, and they've got to, well, I say interrupting, so they've got to balance those things, and they're trying to battle then sort of maybe battle isn't the right word, but they don't realize that there's coaching out there for this kind of thing, and also sometimes they don't feel like they deserve it then as well. So that's where the marketing struggle is there. It's you know what I mean? Sometimes they don't even realize that it can be changed or that there is a problem. You know what I mean? So does that make sense? And, I'm not sure if you're there, boss. I'm not sure if you're there. I'll just message you. 2 secs. You all right there, boss? Can't hear you. You there?
I'm just trying again.
Yeah, I got it. I can hear you. Yeah.
One
So
second. Still nothing?
I can see your video. I can hear your video.
I can't hear you now. Right. I'm just going to go to mobile hotspot. 1 second.
Okay. All right.
Let's see if there's a time. No internet secured. Yes, there we go. Is this any better?
I can hear you.
I can see. It looks like mine's working.
Can you hear me?
And here we go.
Can you
Independent,
hear me,
dual headphones, speakers, and oh no, here we go. What about now?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Oh, you've gone. Where have you gone now? Bloody typical. Check I've not turned anything down. No, I can hear that. I just can't hear you. I presume you can hear me.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. I can see you nodding. Let's try.
Yeah.
Well, I've got you on the computer now. I can hear you on my computer.
Oh, okay. Right. Cool.
Is it feeding back?
No, it's not feeding back at all. No.
Right. Okay. This is fine. So this is good. So we're still recording, and it's recording to the cloud.
Okay.
So all we need to do is I'll just chop that bit out.
Yeah. No worries. Okay. Okay. So what was the last bit you heard me say?
We were talking. You were telling me about setting up a Facebook group. You were setting up a Facebook group.
Yeah.
You were talking about burnout. You were talking about creating an avatar, a buyer persona that was roughly based on yourself, but also then going on to talk a bit about women.
Yeah. So basically, what I realized when I was working in coaching circles is that all the coaches that I knew mostly were women. 90% of them are women, right? And they were trying to teach people how to look after themselves, but they weren't. But the coaches weren't actually looking after themselves. So I was like, hang on a second, right? So you're telling other people to look after themselves. You're giving them, self-care tips, that kind of thing. Well, what are you doing to look after yourself so you can serve other people? So what I realized then is I need to serve those people so they can serve other people. The problem I found in marketing is that that people probably didn't realize that they could have they probably didn't realize that this kind of service actually existed, so they probably weren't looking for it, you know what I mean? And because it's such a unique blend of teaching people how to cook, and then using it as mindfulness, that kind of thing, and also they probably don't realize that it was that there is a mental load. They weren't probably aware of the mental load as such. They probably didn't know what to search for. They probably didn't know that they actually needed help as well. So it's just like, okay, right, I need to grow. I need to sort of start talking about do you face this problem? And then going, if you do, come to this group basically, and talk about the specific problems that people actually have to deal with, rather than going, I'm a graphics. Everyone knows what a graphics designer is. Everyone knows what a lot of people in business online know what SEO is, or they have a general gist then, but they wouldn't have a clue what a culinary coach does or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's more aware. It's the marketing has been about. It's had to be about sort of raising awareness, first of all, what a coach like me can do. First of all,
I take it that involves a lot of content creation, a lot of kind of what we call top of the funnel, like say awareness phase content, where people are starting to recognize that they have a problem. So you're creating content that just talks to them at the point that they're starting to realize that they have a problem, and letting them know what the different solutions might be to that problem. So that when they are starting to consider what they want to implement, they'll know what the options are. So it's quite a kind of an education piece that you're going to have to do. I think is it? I'm just trying to think which strategy it is. I think it's probably called something like blue ocean strategy. where the audience has very little understanding of the service that you're offering.
Yeah, that's probably where it is. Then that it's I've never heard of that term, blue ocean. So that's something I'll definitely look at and go.
Yeah, there's blue ocean strategy and lighthouse strategy, and they kind of play together. And it's all about educating the audience. I mean, it's kind of content marketing.
Yeah,
there's probably taken over that now, and it's a fundamental part of marketing in many ways, that we educate the audience, or try to educate the audience, and give them some understanding of the brand, of the individuals involved within the brand and the organizations that we work for, because there's so much content out there that you've got to find ways to cut through, and that can be one of the most difficult things. And I know that you're in a number of groups, a number of Facebook groups, and perhaps networking groups as well, that enable you to kind of spread the word in a different way. I think that's how we started talking more. Rachel.
It was Jenny Hardman.
That's right.
Rachel, and then she saw what I was doing. She was like, right, I need that, basically. And it's and I think this is where personal brand also has to come into play, because I've had to create a personal brand because the blend of skills that I offer then are very unique to me as such. So I feel like I've had to anyway. You know, it's that's where maybe that's where the lighthouse bit is. Then this is okay. Here's your problem. Here's your general selection of problems, and I'm the one person then to funny enough, I'm the one person that can help you with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's
I think it's really interesting. I think that, you know, your Facebook groups and the content that you're putting out there, getting involved in those other groups is absolutely one of the great kind of things that you do, and a great way to get yourself out there. And I suppose the other things would be things like creating content, lots of content on your website, and really pushing that forward. But it's going to be a slow burn until you build that momentum, until you find those clients that come on board that really understand what you're trying to do, and kind of buy into that as well.
So